Metroid, one of Nintendo's biggest franchises, and also a personal favorite of mine. It spawned an entirely new genre of games that would later be coined as the Metroidvania style. While the majority of Metroid games never quite met worldwide success like Mario or Zelda, fans were always eager to see what was next in store for their favorite bounty hunter. Nintendo was ready for Metroid to take that next step, and for it to cement itself among some of their top earners. But for many reasons, this newest entry ended up almost completely killing the franchise, so much so that we never saw another new entry until 11 years later. So today, I'm going to be examining my most recent Metroid Other M playthrough, and we're going to be taking a look at the good, the bad, and the many ugly aspects of this game. First, in order to better understand what happened, we need to go back to the year this game came out, 2010. It was a big year in the entertainment industry. Artists such as Jay Biebs, Kesha, and Katy Perry were dominating the music industry. Classic films like Scott Pilgrim and Easy A also made their debut this year. And the biggest game that came out was not from a big AAA company. It was instead the free app Angry Birds that started the trend for mobile gaming. Meanwhile, Nintendo was entering the prime years of their newest console, the Wii, the console that was primarily aimed for a more casual audience. Now that the console was in everyone's living rooms, it was time for Nintendo to revitalize some of their classic franchises like Kirby, Donkey Kong, and now Metroid. The trailer alone was enough to get fans extremely hyped for this next iteration of Metroid. Metroid hadn't been back in a 2D environment since Super Metroid back in 1994. This new game sought to mix both classic 2D as well as 3D by offering you a first-person perspective when you pointed your Wii remote at the TV, which on paper sounds like a really awesome idea, but oftentimes led to this. What is this part? Oh, yeah, like I was supposed to get that. What the fuck? What the fuck? What am I supposed to do here? Now don't get me wrong, if we examine the game from the standards of something that was made in 2010, the controls really aren't that bad. I actually found the game to be quite responsive when it came to dodging the many enemies you encounter. Samus even has some flashy new wrestling moves that she can pull off if you stagger an enemy. What was even nicer is that I rarely ran into a glitch or bug during my 10-hour playthrough. The only bad things I could find technically were that if you run too fast through doors, you'll run into some loading screens which stop you in your tracks, which is understandable because again, the Wii's hardware was not very cutting edge at the time. They also added these weird investigation sequences where it's not at all evident where you're supposed to be looking. But again, this is certainly not bad for what was deemed reasonable in 2010. Looking at it now, 10 years later, where motion controls have gotten much better than what they used to be, I can totally see why a lot of people would get very frustrated with it. While the controls and gameplay weren't a huge deal breaker for me, there was a decent amount of odd choices that differentiate it from past titles. For one, you no longer find suit upgrades in the world from exploring or defeating enemies. The story just gives you upgrades as it sees fit, which I'll go on a tangent about later once I start talking about the story. Samus also no longer collects health orbs or missiles from the enemies when she defeats them, so now there's not much point in defeating the enemies that you come across. Samus can only recover health and ammo from save stations or by charging up her gun, which takes a solid 5 seconds and leaves you vulnerable to enemy attacks. When it comes to finding an item or a secret, you no longer get that fun, catchy little jingle. Instead, they just give you a generic little soundbite, which does not nearly feel as rewarding. Ugh, take it back. One of the best aspects of the original Metroid titles is collecting all the items. They like to do this thing where you'll see an item, but you won't have the right equipment to get to it, only until later when you do have the right equipment, and then it gives your brain a little rush of dopamine when you finally manage to nab that item. And this game certainly has a decent amount of items for you to collect, but it just doesn't quite itch that scratch the previous games had. Even at the end of the game when the map shows you where every item is, I still struggled to find anything. I'm not sure if it's the level design or what, but everything seems to blend together in the background, so it's really hard to tell what things you can destroy and what things you can't. It's just... right here, you bomb? Oh wow. Wow. That's ridiculous. Early Metroid games also became pretty famous for speedruns. Daring enough players were able to skip over large portions of the games as long as they met certain requirements, but speedrunning is pretty much all but impossible here. Since this entry puts a heavy emphasis on storytelling, there's tons of moments where the game locks a door on you so you can walk into a scripted cutscene. Even after I beat the game, there were still doors that were locked on me, and I had to wait until the very last moments of the game before I could even get to them. Which sucks, because it really strips away any sense of freedom that you had from previous entries. And then there's just the general atmosphere the game gives off. Past games have also been known for being super atmospheric and having a phenomenal soundtrack to pair with it. In Super Metroid, you'd come across a new area and hear this beautiful music that sets the tone of the area. But in this game, the soundtrack just feels like music from a generic action movie. All of this seems like really odd things to do to a beloved series, but when we look back at some director interviews, we start to see why they made some of these drastic changes. As I said before, the Wii was Nintendo's answer to try and tap into the casual market. In response, the creators wanted to create a more linear and cinematic experience to appeal to this kind of audience. So they certainly deviated a lot from the original source material, and in the end, it just never really feels like it pays off for any audience in the long run. Metroid titles of old have never really had a storyline because, well, they never really needed to. Every game pretty much starts with Samus landing on an unknown planet to do a mission, and then that's pretty much it. You usually unravel the story by examining logs that were left behind by the residents that used to live there. Or in the older titles, you create your own lore based on what you're seeing in the background of the environments. So the writer of this game said, what if we do something different and explore Samus as a character? Which sounds great, but not when the end product turns into this.
Which was given to me somehow by the baby, and the baby.
And a baby.
None of the baby remained on me.
Oh my god.
Never again would I encounter the baby.
Why are you so obsessed with the baby?
Let's go!
Confession time. What do you mean? What are you talking about?
There's a Samus. I wish I could battle Ridley, but I can't. Unlike you, I'm no galactic savior. I'm merely human.
'Cause I'm only human.
I can save you. You should be completely healed soon. There isn't much time. Both need to get started on our mission.
This is torture.
Rough with you.
You got a little more than rough with me, bitch.
Good luck, Samus.
You fucking shot me. You shot me on sight. Oh, man. So, yeah. They made Samus come off as this boring and overly emotional character. But what about some of the other characters? Who could forget this new crew of colorful people like James or Lyle? I'm not gonna lie, I had to Google these names because they really did make some of the most uninteresting characters here. The story mostly focuses on Adam and Samus's relationship. I originally thought they had this weird romantic thing going on, but he's more supposed to be a paternal father figure to Samus. One of the biggest problems that I mentioned before is that in this game, Adam authorizes when Samus is allowed to use certain weapons on the space station. The reasoning being that Samus's weapons could hurt civilians that may be stranded on the ship. Which, okay, first off, at this point in the Metroid story, which is supposed to be right around here, I would assume Samus is experienced enough to know when to use self-control in certain combat situations. Second, in this game, there are multiple scenarios where Samus is put at a disadvantage because Adam refuses to authorize certain pieces of equipment. Their relationship with each other is also just very poorly written. Adam comes off as this misogynistic POS the entire game, going so far as to shooting Samus in the back towards the end of the game. This maybe begs the question, was this game mistranslated from the original source material? There was even a rumor going around online that the creator purposely made Samus to be submissive so that she could appeal to Japanese male audiences. Which would be pretty messed up if it were true, but no, the majority of Japanese players also dislike this game for the same reasons. According to Legends of Localization, they took a look at some Japanese review sites and translated the following. It's a movie game, and the people keep talking and talking, which doesn't quite feel like a Metroid game. Another user wrote, Sakamoto went crazy on this one. Another person, which is my favorite one here, I didn't think it was a bad game, but it definitely gave Samus as a way different image than any of the others. Until now, she always came across silent, cool-headed, lone soldier like Master Chief. But in Other M, it feels like she's portrayed as regular woman Samus. And if that's not enough evidence, looking at the sales numbers in Japan, they're just as abysmal as the numbers in the West. It's no secret that Nintendo has been riding the remake train recently, but it'll be interesting to see if they ever remake this game, or if they try to keep it dead and buried. They do acknowledge Adam briefly in Metroid Dread, but really nothing else. They also handled Samus' character much better in that game as well. As a Metroid Prime fan, I've been on the edge of my seat since 2017, waiting to see what they've been cooking up for that game. Since it's been so long, I'm hoping they're doing something crazy like revitalizing the series the way that Mario Odyssey or Breath of the Wild did. Or, they could still be writing up that first draft. If there's anything I want them to incorporate in future entries, it's those badass wrestling moves from this game. But everything else can get yeeted right in the trash. But if you'd like to torture yourself like I and many other people have, I do recommend making a strong drink for this one.
You say this will cure me. What is this?
About how